Okay. Hello, everyone. I'm Gloria Tiller, and you have tuned in to the local scene. It's been a while. We're a little rusty on in the studio. Well, we're glad to be back, and we hope to have a really interesting show for you tonight. Sometimes it takes a while for history to emerge from the depths of obscurity. And tonight we're going to be talking about someone that we should have been talking about for a long time. And I've got Sonya Hollins with us tonight, if we can have a wide shot. And we're going to try to resurrect here a person that should have gotten a lot of attention through the years and didn't. So history is becoming more important to us. Legacy is becoming more important. And we're going to rediscover a great person who is part of our community for a long time. Welcome, Sonya. Nice seeing you.
Thank you. You too. It's good to be back after COVID, and we can see each other again and enjoy each other here in PMN at PMN Studio.
Yes,
so
public
awesome.
media is well, and studio still here.
Yes.
New lighting.
Yes, it looks good. Looks good in
Looks
here.
good in here.
Yes.
You have not been sitting still, even though we have not been doing shows. Right. You've been quite busy. And what we're here to celebrate tonight is African-American woman who actually was a big part of Western Michigan University to the point where they just recently named a college after her.
Yes.
Her name's Merze Tate.
Yes.
M-E-R-Z-E, Merze Tate.
Yes.
Now, what brought her to Western? What was the, when did she live? Oh, good, you've got your book there.
Book here, so you guys can see that. Put it here in the middle.
So.
Yeah, so, you know, Merze's story is very complicated and it's amazing at the same time.
Well, now, she was a Michigan person. Her family actually got a homesteading grant, and so her family owned a home in Michigan, and she went to school.
Yeah, so her family was really originally from Ohio.
Okay.
And they were actually Underground Railroad conductors. And they actually moved to Michigan with the Homestead Act. They were rebels. They were people who lived on the edge. They were people who weren't afraid to go out and do things and help people, you know, escape to freedom. And so Merze Tate got that spirit from them.
Now, she was born in 1905. We've got to set the stage here where she actually went to school in the early teens, and she went to a high school, and she excelled immediately.
Right. So, you know, Merze's family, very dedicated to education. In the back of their yard, when they moved to Michigan, Mecosta County, which is about 45 minutes from Grand Rapids, they were the first Negro settlers in the area. And the land that her family owned, some of the acres they gave to build a community school, elementary school. So Merze actually walked to her backyard to go to school early in her life. And then later on, when she went to high school, she walked literally 3 miles a day.
Each way
to high school, never missing a day, straight A's. 10th grade, her school burned down, and they graduated everybody. And because she was in 10th grade, she was like, well, I want to go into college. I need 2 more years of high school.
And she did get the honor. That was her first honor.
Yes.
That she did get valedictorian.
Valedictorian.
Even though it was 10th grade.
Right.
It was all A's.
Yes.
And she still couldn't get into college.
Well, she went to Battle Creek to work as a maid in a home to go to Battle Creek Central.
Okay.
So she finished her last 2 years of high school at Battle Creek Central and got all A's there. And she was accepted to the University of Michigan, but then they found out she was African American, and so she didn't have that option open. So the woman that she worked for was actually friends with Dr. Waldo, who was the president of Western. And Dr. Waldo said, hey, you can bring her over here. And her employer gave her a stipend to start her off at school, and she moved into a house on South Street with a manager of a paper company here and worked as a maid in their home to go to school. So, yeah.
So she came to Western and got an associate's degree in education.
Well, back then it was a teacher's college.
Okay, right,
So
it
she
was
got
the
her-
teacher's college.
Right.
So again, honors and all kinds of great information, but she couldn't get a job.
Right. So after she finished her teaching certificate, she became the first African American to get a bachelor's degree from Western in teaching.
Wow.
All A's except for 2 B's, I think it was, that she had. And even though she had that amazing stellar record, Michigan did not allow black teachers to teach high school. So Dr. Waldo and a few of the deans got together and found different opportunities for her to interview outside the state.
And so she ended up in Indianapolis.
Right, at Crispus Attucks High School, where that year, 1927, when she graduated, they had started a brand new high school just for African American students, and it was created and founded by the Ku Klux Klan because they didn't want black students going to school with white students.
Oh my God.
So they created this amazing, beautiful school, but a lot of the teachers who were there were teachers who couldn't get jobs in their own communities teaching because they were African American. So they have these amazing teachers who come to their college really on a professor type level of teaching. And these teachers would go to school in the summers, get their master's degrees or PhDs, and Merze Tate did that as well. She went to Columbia and got her master's degree there while she was still teaching.
That's what I was going to say, is that she didn't just leave teaching alone. She continued her education.
Right.
And this is where it really gets interesting. So she went to Columbia while she was teaching.
Right. Went to Columbia, graduated from there with her master's, and then decided she wanted to go to Oxford University.
Yes.
And she had did some traveling on some steamers. You know, back then they had the little boat steamers, and she had met a woman who said, "Oh, I went up to Oxford and it was beautiful." And she's like, "Up to Oxford? That sounds pretty nice. I want to do that." You know, and so she had in her mind to do that. And so when she went back to teaching that year, she actually had started a travel club for kids, and she took them to Washington, D.C. As one of her last trips in 1932. And after that, she left teaching and went over to Oxford and got her degree there. The first
But now,
black
what degree
person.
did she get in Oxford?
That was in disarmament. So she had a degree in disarmament, which was in like nuclear weapon. The history of So she was like one of the early people who were was studying nuclear weapons. Yeah, she was amazing.
And she did do some scientific stuff. She had a couple of patents. She played around with some inventing some things.
Yeah, so she wrote a book on disarmament. She had 2 patents for creating ice cream in the freezer. You know, a patent that was used by KitchenAid, and different people used some of her techniques from that.
But she still wasn't done with her education.
She wasn't. So after Oxford, she really wanted to stay in Europe. That was really her dream. She loved it over there. But then at that point, her and some friends went to hear this guy speak. And because she speaks 5 languages, she understood German. So they went to Germany and heard this guy speaking. And she was like, "I have to get out of this country. Some terrible things are about to happen." And that was Adolf Hitler. She actually went and heard.
So this was the early 30s?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So she was like, "I'm not staying in Europe. I'm leaving." And she became a professor at Barbara Scotia College, which was a black college, and then she went to Morgan State College in Baltimore, where she was a women's dean.
Okay.
And while she was there, she decided to say, "Okay, I want to go and get a PhD from Harvard." One of her friend's sons had graduated from Harvard, and she was like, "I think I can do this."
That.
You know?
Of course she can.
Right. So at that time, there was a women's college, was Radcliffe, was the women's version of Harvard, but they were on the same campus because women weren't going to school with the men. So she received a PhD from there in political science. So it was the first.
Well, and it was more than just political science. It was international relations.
Yes.
Government and international relations.
Yes.
I mean, that's a lot.
It is.
And from Harvard University.
Yes. So she was amazing. She was amazing.
So then, where did she end up? She ended up teaching, continuing to teach, but then she was also publishing.
Right.
And she was also traveling everywhere. And she she was awarded a Fulbright scholarship for 40, and she traveled 44,000 miles around the world.
Yeah, she was amazing. So while she was teaching, she was the first female history professor at Howard University, all black college. And during that time, she still took her summers and different times to travel the world to write books on political history that were used in universities all over the world. She wrote about Australia, New Zealand, South Africa. You know, she was just an amazing woman and spoke 5 languages. She was a national bridge champion. You know, she played bridge. She was able to bid in 5 languages. So wherever she went around the world, people played bridge with her. They loved her. They loved her. The annexation of Hawaii, she did a book on that. That was a best-selling book. So she was just a woman who just saw something and she went for it. She was a photographer. She actually would go to, when she did overseas travels, she actually got a press card from the African American press. So whenever she went overseas, she was their overseas correspondent. So she would write stories and send them back when she was overseas to put in the African American newspapers about life overseas and different things black people were doing overseas.
Well, she was working as a consultant on some other things too, wasn't she? Part-time consulting.
She does so many things. She worked for the State Department.
That's
Right.
She was doing some
Cinematography.
consulting.
She did cinematography for them. So she did. Back in the day they did travel videos and about different countries. So she did a lot of those videos for the State Department.
Wow.
She was amazing.
And she got her college start, her beginnings were right here at Western.
Yes.
So let's go back to Western, which just happened this summer. Is Western has now named a college in her name, the Merze Tate College.
Yes.
And it's a college of exploration.
Yeah, basically for students who really don't know what they want to do yet, it gives them an opportunity to come to college and experiment on different, areas based on what their passions are. So they'll have a little more guidance at this college to really find out what they want. So when they finish college, they're actually doing what they really want to do.
And the most outstanding, or one of the outstanding aspects of this is that there aren't any colleges that have an African American woman named for them in the United States.
Well,
other than black colleges, but I mean, just colleges as a whole.
Well, the University of Georgia actually named the first college back last year in 2020.
Last year.
So
Okay.
they beat us, and she was,
okay.
and that was an education college too. So that woman was a graduate of their school and went into education, and so they named that school for her.
This is so overdue. This is so overdue when you've got this caliber of person, this unknown person who did so much,
Right.
that has been overlooked. That this is cool now.
Yeah, but the thing about it is not that she passed away and we're naming the school for her. She was very active with the university when she was alive. I mean, she left over $1 million to Western when she passed away. She was on their foundation board. She gave $50,000 to start a computer center there. There was a Merze Tate Center in Sangren Hall before they renovated Sangren Hall, but now the Merze Tate Grant Center there is named for her. So she was very active with the college, even during her life.
Right, and the thing is too that she was born in 1905, and she didn't pass away until 1996. So she led a full life. She's 91 years old when she died.
She did. Very full life. I mean, even there are people today who can't even compete with the life that she lived. And you think about the era. I mean, there was Jim Crow era.
Oh,
there was,
my God.
women weren't allowed to do certain things or go certain places. They were just supposed to be housewives, that people thought. So she really did a lot in her life, and she sacrificed a lot. Toward the end of her life, she really looked back on not having a family and not being married. And those are some things that she had to deal with as she, kind of got to the end of her life.
Well, and as overlooked as she was, there were opportunities that she was overlooked on. That today we would just wring our hands and fuss over that. I mean, that this was a tragedy, that this was not done, sooner, but. It is happening, and
Yes.
it is coming around, and I'm so glad that that Western has realized this, and this is cool. Now, you realized this a number of years ago, right?
Right, yeah.
You discovered her when you were working at the Gazette.
Yeah, I've been beating her drum for about a couple decades now. So when I was at the Kalamazoo Gazette, my passion is history. So I love anything dealing with history. So whenever I write stories, I try to find out what's the history behind it. And so I went to Western and asked them if they had a list of the first African Americans, the first graduate, the first basketball player, the first teacher, whatever.
Sure.
And so the alumni department gave me a list. They were like, well, this is what we know. And so I went down the list and I saw this name, Merze Tate, and like, is this a man or a woman? I have no idea. But they said she was the first woman African-American woman to receive a Distinguished Alumni Award. And so my thought was, what did she get this award for? I'm interested. So I went to Sharon Carlson at the archives, and she said, well, when she died, she left some boxes. You can look through those boxes. And so I went through those boxes, and there were scrapbooks of her travels around the world. It was a treasure trove of
photographs?
Yes, of her photographs that she had taken around the world. And so my initial thought was, I need to write a book about this woman. That was my initial thought. So I started scanning all these hundreds and hundreds of photographs, and we created an exhibit, that started at the Women's Hall of Fame in Lansing. They debuted the exhibit. It was a partnership with Grand Valley State.
Sonya,
so it was awesome. And so during this time, we're like, okay, we need to get our story told. The Kalamazoo Community Foundation put something in their paper, and they said, if anyone has a unique way to educate students, we'll give a Good Neighbor grant.
Okay.
And I said, I'll give it a try. I saw a picture of her with a travel club. So when she left Western and went to work for Crispus Attucks High School, the all-black high school, she was a history teacher who started a travel club. And she took her kids to Washington, D.C. Exactly.
Field trips.
Extended field trips.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I saw that picture of her with these kids, and I'm like, that would be cool to have a travel club where kids could travel and write about it. And because journalism was my background, writing is very important. So I proposed, the travel club. And so they said, hey, it sounds like a cool idea, gave me the money, and we've been rolling ever since, all around the world. We've been to Japan, Hawaii, Europe, traveled all around, and just some amazing opportunities our girls have had.
Now, when you talk about your girls and stuff, who could be part of this? What age range and what it, I always think of Girl Scouts and all that kind of thing, but this is something much more educational and closer to home.
Right. Well, we do have a lot of our girls who are Girl Scouts, and there's actually a badge if you're a Girl Scout and a Merze Tate Explorer, you get a special badge. So that was something Jan Barker did here, our Girl Scout Heart of Michigan president. So that was exciting. But yeah, basically girls start off now 4th grade through 12th grade, and they just come and learn about the world and different people, and they say they want to be travel writers. So a lot of our focus is about media and about writing as we're meeting astronauts, women who are ambassadors, Oscar, winners, and, illustrators.
Yes, you mentioned that,
right.
This last...
Doctors and lawyers, and not only are they meeting these women, they're meeting them where they work, and they're meeting them in a way where they're doing hands-on activities with these women to learn a little bit more about what they do.
For example, you were telling me before we started airing that you spent a whole day at the medical center here at Western.
Right.
With your 5, is it 5 girls now that are in the group?
Oh, we have over 20 girls in our group.
You've got 20 groups? Okay,
yeah.
20 girls
yeah.
in your group.
So when we first started, we started with 12 girls. And then one year we had like 50 girls. And I'm like, whoa, this is a lot. So we scaled back. But basically, we've been the Striker, we've been on the, Friends Goodwill ship. So we do all these experiments or, journeys with different people where they have this, memory of what did I learn, and maybe I want to do that one day. So one of those things we did this past summer was a trip to the medical school. And so I visited the medical school, and they said, well, we love to have the girls come here. What should we do? We can show them around. We can show them cadavers. I'm like, I think that might be a little too much. We don't want to traumatize them, so let's create a scene with a fairy tale character where they have to solve a murder, and they learn about all the aspects of the medical field. And so we had to solve the mystery of Snow White. And they had the murder scene, they had the apple there, they had, Snow White there, and then they went from
microscopes where
everything. They were in telescope, they were doing samples, DNA samples from the apple, they were learning from toxicology. So they had a whole day where they met all these professionals who walked them through an actual crime scene, all the way to what happens at the end and how you find out what actually happened. So that was amazing.
That must have been fun.
So they learned about all these women, all these women who are professionals, and some men too, but they met all these women in pathology and all these different, fields that they had never heard of before.
Now, currently, you have got I should mention it, and I don't know if it's going to be online, but if people want information about this group, it's explorers.org?
Yeah, it's Merze Tate explorers.org.
Okay.
So www.merzetateexplorers.org. And we're on Facebook and all the social media as well. So you can just Google us and you should be able to find Merze Tate Explorers.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But the kinds of activities, now you've been doing all of this virtually too, haven't you, during that?
So yeah, when COVID hit, we had to go virtual. So we did a lot of things before COVID. We were here at PMN a lot, where the girls were doing their own shows, interviewing people, learning how to work the cameras and all that cool stuff. But when COVID hit, we just basically stayed virtual. So we still meet twice a month, and still meet with amazing people, with financial planners who would do activities with them and their parents about how to budget your money and save your money. And we met with people about the census, representatives who talked about the census and how important it was. And girls had to encourage their family members to, do the census and fill that out and why it's important. We met with a student who won the Foot Locker scholarship, and she was in New York. So they talked to her about how to apply for scholarships and things that make you stand out. And we even have a partnership with some girls in Tanzania, where we had an auction where they created items there and we sold them to get scholarships for those girls to go to school.
Oh, wow.
So we've been busy, even during COVID. Yeah. We've been doing a lot.
Well, you've had probably more activity, more opportunity with these virtual meetings, because you can meet with people that you would not normally, they wouldn't fly here or come here to visit necessarily, but they could communicate with them.
Or we would get to a place and we wouldn't be able to have a one-on-one with that person. So one of that example is with the Eyes Don't See, the author Dr. Mona, who did the book about the Flint water crisis. They actually read her book as part of our book club, and she came in and talked to them, virtually, and they got to interview her. So that was amazing. They had this private, meeting with this amazing best-selling author. So,
so now we're going to get down to the real nitty-gritty here, that you're holding up a book that you wrote. This is what was going to be a large book, ended up being a book for children.
And basically, because Merze Tate's story is so vast, it's like, it's like I'm still working on that. But whenever we have the exhibit, people would say, when is the book coming out? When is the book coming out? And I said, well, let's do something small that really highlights a lot of the images that Merze Tate had in her archives that I scanned, for her book. So pictures of her family, pictures of, her at school, her schoolhouse.
Oh, she had all of this?
Yes.
She left all of this to Western at Waldo.
And they were just in a box. They were just sitting there. And so when I discovered them, like, oh my gosh, we have to show these to the world. And there's her in her travels, her in Europe, her on steamers, and her in, by pyramids and the Eiffel Tower and Taj Mahal. All these amazing stories. She took pictures of children all over the world too. So beautiful photographs of these children that you can see here.
Look at that. And
just in their everyday lives, they saw this one with this camera and they all gravitated, toward her. And she just has these amazing photographs.
Because this is in the 40s, 50s, 60s. Yeah. This is in a period of time when traveling was still kind of new to the world.
Yeah, it was still kind of new. This is a picture of the Merze Tate Center that was in the old Sangren Hall that was dedicated, for her. There's a copy of her patent. That's her when she was teaching as a Fulbright in India. So that's a picture of some of her books there. But yeah, she was just an amazing woman. And like I said, these photographs and all these things had been there for over a decade before I even discovered them. And so I think when people, realized that, they were like, this is a gold mine. And so we really started to try to get her name and her story out. And the book is in poetry form, based on a poem that she wrote on her way to Oxford. So she wrote a poem on her way to Oxford.
I see the poem there.
Yes. So as she was on the ship on her way to Europe, she wrote a poem, and I used that same rhythm throughout to do this story about her life, and ends it with her poem.
So people can get this to use in a classroom, or just to get it to share and
for sure. Stuff. Yeah, it's on Amazon, and they're at Michigan News Agency and locally, and just different places. So
can we get them at Kazoo Books?
We can. Let's get them there. I would love to.
Let's get some.
I would love to.
Yeah.
So just amazing. My husband Sean does all our graphic design for our publishing company, Season Press, and so he did a great job in the design for her.
Oh, good.
So yeah, it's a beautiful story.
We've got a few minutes left here, and it's so good to see you. I can't tell you that Bill actually called me yesterday and said, "Would you do this today?" I'm going, really?
Right. Yeah. Bill sent me a text message on Facebook and said, "Can you be in the studio on Wednesday?" And I'm like, anything for Bill. So I'll be there. I will be there.
I saw that name come up, and I said, okay. So I had to run home and figure out what to wear, because I never, I haven't been out. Up. I haven't been out anywhere.
Right.
But we can continue some of this stuff in the local scene. Let's hope we can get some more things going on. You've got this book. You've got another book that you're working on.
Yes.
You've got some, certainly the Explorers. How do girls get into the organization? Is there a limit, I assume, on the number of people at a time? Yeah,
each September is our deadline when we have applications. So we start our year in September every year, and then in October we announce our new group of girls. So usually around June, the application will be available on merzetate.org, and girls can download the application and send it in, and we just go from there.
And also, too, we should mention that Western is having a program celebration October 8th.
Yes, so at 4 o'clock, October 8th at Bernhardt, they're going to do a ceremony to celebrate the new Merze Tate College. And then in February, on Merze Tate's birthday, February 6th, they will have an official ribbon cutting at Ellsworth Hall, which is where the Merze Tate College will be housed.
Okay.
So just look at merzetate.org, check out more information and details on that.
Yeah.
Coming up.
Well, I think this is a real innovative move on Western's part.
Yes.
And something.
And I'm a Bronco too, so this is exciting.
I am too.
See?
And,
all right.
Kalamazoo has a reputation. If you went to college at Western, you tend to stay in Kalamazoo for some reason. There's something about going to school here that attracts you to the community. And I think it still holds true after all these years. It was a few years ago that I went to Western. We're not going to go into that. But the thing is, I'm really glad that you joined us tonight.
Thank you. Thanks for being able to interview me. I love talking about Merze Tate as always, so anytime.
Well, we'll try to get some authors on the show and try to do a little bit more on the show. And if anybody has any suggestions, if anybody wants to do an interview, I can be reached at Kazoo Books, and we can set something up. We can get this information out to the public. We have a real treasure here with Public Media Network, and the studio is open now that we can use. So thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening to our show tonight, and stay safe. See you soon. Thank you.
That was great.
Yay! Yay!